Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Rollin Illini on this snowy Friday. I'm here with executive producer Ryan Wilson, and making his Rollin Illini debut, my friend and roommate Zane Bando. I'm Avery Schaefer. We got a lot to get to tonight, so let's get right to it.
All right.
Well, it's nice to hear from you all. Oh, my name is Zan Bando, making his first Rollin Illini appearance. Thank you to those who are currently listening right now on 107.1 WPGU. Like my host Avery Schaefer said, we have a had to get to tonight. So Avery, please give everyone the docket of what is going to be on this second edition of Rollin Illini for the spring semester for 2019.
Of course. So firstly, we will be discussing what happened with the men's and women's basketball teams at their tournament up in Auburn. Next, we will have a in-studio interview with Vishal, the mastermind of some technology for disabled note-taking. And thirdly, and finally tonight, we will have a little update on ourselves and how we got here. So let's get started.
That sounds all right. So we will kick it off with talking about how the Illinois wheelchair basketball teams fared today in their tournament in Auburn. It consists of a couple teams, most notably Edinboro, Wisconsin, Auburn, and Alabama. So the men's team started the day off today at 9 a.m. with a matchup against Edinboro, and according to an interview that I had just yesterday with men's head coach Matt Bucci, he said that they were going to be very intrigued with what Edinboro was going to be running going to be running stylistically on offense, because it's a very similar game to how the Illini and wheelchair team plays. And it did not turn out so well for the Illini, as they fell to Edinboro in their first matchup 58-48. And in their second matchup, they took on Auburn today, and they fell 59-31. On the women's side today, they lost a tough game. They lost a tough game in competition. They lost a tough game in competition. My apologies. That was 59-31. The second game for the men was a final of 58-48.
Wow. Did you memorize all those stats?
Yes,
Holy Toledo.
I did.
I was looking up Zan's laptop here, Ryan Wilson here, and I saw no stats. I was wondering if you memorized everything. So nice job.
I'm glad to see I'm not the only one who uses memory to do this.
Hey, now, shots fired at me, I guess, but that's okay.
It's all right. It happens. It happens sometimes. It's okay.
So Zan, what did you see in the games you watched today? I know they have the live stream on Facebook, the Illinois Wheelchair Basketball Facebook page. I know you got to catch a couple minutes of the live stream. What did you see from the team?
Well, first off, for the first time I've ever tuned in to a Illini wheelchair basketball live stream, I was incredibly impressed with how easy it was to watch the game. They had over, I believe it was 32 viewers on one of their live streams. It was a tremendous feat to see, and it was awesome to see just how good the camera work was, showing instant replay, and always knowing what the score and the time on the clock was is something that I found very beneficial, especially for those who don't follow Illinois wheelchair basketball extensively. Their Facebook page is tremendous. You can go like it right now. If you type in Illinois wheelchair basketball, that's the first thing that pops up. Their Facebook is super active. They've been posting pictures from the tournament, and they will all weekend as they will be there a little bit into Sunday, and they will wrap up the weekend and come back to Champaign. And during the interview with Bucci, who I had a tremendous conversation with, he said that almost every other week they will be on and off for tournaments all across the country, and this will culminate with nationals happening
at our very own State Farm Center
from March 13th to March 16th. He said that there will be between, I believe he said it was 16 teams total in this tournament, and I did also ask him about some of his fondest memories as coach of the Illinois wheelchair basketball team, most notably being winning the national championship by beating the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater in 2008 on a last-second shot in overtime. And he didn't really like to talk about proudest moments as a head coach, but that was one for sure that he said made him very proud of this program, and he takes great pride in making sure that the athletes work as hard as they possibly can in order to put out the best product on the floor. And he was just overall a really great guy to interview, and I had a tremendous time talking to him. That was probably one of my favorite parts of prepping for this show yesterday.
Now, on the walk over here, you said to me that you were impressed with the physicality of the game?
Yeah, I was overall impressed with how fast everyone is flying to the ball, diving for loose balls, diving for rebounds, making shots in transition, and just overall, it seemed like a very fast-paced game. And wheelchair basketball is something that I don't really watch a lot of, so it was kind of different to see the style and play to where there's not really a lot of timeouts or anything like that. So just constant movement is something you gotta really pay attention to, and the basketball goes out of the player's hands in instance. So it's very important to keep your head on a swivel when you're watching these games, because you never know what's going to happen. Because by the time you look away, there could easily be a turnover, and the other team could have ball possession. So who knows? I mean, it's a very very different game than, let's just say, able-bodied basketball with a lot of stoppages and all the other intricacies that go into it. And that's what I found to be the most interesting part, and just being able to live stream the game on Facebook for the world to see, for those who are stuck here in Champaign and want to see how the Illini wheelchair basketball teams do. I think it's a tremendous feat, and I think we're seeing a lot more of it in Illini athletics with how many games you can access on a daily basis. So I think it's great.
Or a tremendous wheel, as it would. As it would be.
You are right. That is exactly correct. That's a good way to put it as well.
Yeah. So then, this is your first time kind of watching wheelchair basketball. How did it compare from your perspective, with able-bodied basketball? So like with NBA or
even college basketball.
College ball too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I found it interesting because I can tell that the game is mostly decided by the players. There's not a ton of stoppages of play, which I thought was really entertaining, and I just thought the energy that these athletes use to not only propel their chairs up the floor in the most effortless way possible without committing a foul or a travel is just a really, really interesting thing to just watch and marvel at how talented some of these wheelchair athletes can be at their respective sport. And I do think that people need to definitely take note of that, because I think that that's really, really awesome. I think that it's something that as wheelchair sports continue to become more popular, I think people need to take note that there are so many different ways now to be able to watch and view how these teams do. And I think with a little bit more exposure, I think you're going to see I think you're going to see more people start to follow it, especially since they get to go to all of these cool places every other weekend.
Now, you said with increased exposure, what are some of the things that you think are hindering that exposure, maybe?
Well, I think what's hindering the exposure is I think it's great that it is directly available on Facebook, but I think if those graphics that are made on the Facebook page could be transitioned to some sort of Twitter, which we kind of have a hand in, I think that would be a cool way to still promote them, because I've noticed inactivity on Twitter is something that is not the greatest thing, and I think that, that account is still sitting there, and I think that if someone could find a way to just either not delete it entirely, but just have a fresh start, I think it would make people more aware, because now most of the scores that I get at any level, whether it's high school, college, or pro, most of the scores that I get either come from Twitter or some sports app that I have access to, where I can just easily just look up the score and see how the teams did. And I wish and I hope that one day the Illini wheelchair basketball account is going to get better at. But I do think Facebook is a good start. But I think now to promote the younger generation and the generation that we currently live in, I think Instagram and Twitter is the way to go.
Yeah, so Zan, you talk about the Illinois Wheelchair Basketball Twitter pages. I think you could operate their Twitter page if you wanted to.
I think you're right.
I think one thing is that you represent a good portion of their audience. A lot of their followers, including millennials like us, college students like you guys.
Are we though? I don't even know what we are at this point.
Well, you're a college student at the least.
Yeah, we're college students.
I'm just a cranky alum here who lives in the area. I'm getting a phone call too. Zan, would you like to answer my phone call on the radio?
Sure. I'm interested to see who it is.
All right. So Zan's gonna take my phone call on the air.
Actually, it just said that the call failed.
Oh no!
So I don't know what happened there.
We have a guest coming on here in just a few minutes, Vishal. He is the director of the Maker Lab. But anyways, Zan, you were talking about the Illinois Wheelchair Basketball Twitter page, and a lot of problems that the wheelchair basketball teams run into here and the wheelchair track teams is that there's unfortunately a lot of inaccurate information out there about the teams. So unfortunately, you can find some corrections in the Daily Illini, and then the Illinois Wheelchair basketball teams used to have a website. And unfortunately, it was so outdated that a lot of different organizations were taking details from their website and publishing it in a recent story.
I just have a question, because my goal is to become a fellow journalist one day for some publication. I don't know what that will be, but I'm just curious as to why they would not want to verify the sources that they were getting the information from, because I feel like that would be something kind of important to note or to think about when you're trying to publish a story about a sport that is not as publicized as maybe some of the other able-bodied sports. Wouldn't you want to make sure that
misconceptions are nipped in the bud?
Yeah, that's a great point, Zan. I wish I had all those answers for you, as I'm messaging our next guest at the same time. I don't know why some journalists will publish information that they can't verify. I will say that when I was a student, I ran into some factual problems that just kind of slid by my radar and the radars of my editors. So unfortunately, and fortunately, the most accurate information you can get on the teams is from interviewing people here on campus, but unfortunately not all student journalists will do that.
Right, and I just, I think, interviewing athletes is great, but I feel like just in retrospect with everything, it should be a little bit more natural to just go on there and kind of already have some background info kind of already set out in so many words. But hopefully one day, with the direction of where Twitter and all that stuff is going, hopefully the direction one day will change in the favor of they're going to still have coverage that people can look at, and that is something that I think we should really hone in on is that aspect. So I think overall, though, what they're doing with the live streams to conclude this is a tremendous thing that they need to keep doing, because without it, we wouldn't know how they would do every single game that they play.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
Yeah. So we have our guest. He is locked outside of the building right now. I think we might want to take a break so our guest doesn't freeze outside. Maybe we can let him in and let him defrost outside the studio for just a couple minutes before welcoming in Vishal Shajev and another guest to talk about the Maker Lab and how they are and why they are including me on a panel of users who are all Paralympians to help them create and design affordable and accessible products. So we'll be right back here on WPGU 107.1. This is Rollin Illini, Will Gerard, Zan Bando, Avery Schaefer, and Ryan.
As executive producer for the first time.
Avery? Wow. Promotion.
That is a bold statement and something I was not expecting as we go to break. Wow.
Yes. Welcome back to segment 2 of this week's Rolling Illini. I'm here with Zane Bando and the Ryan Wilson. I'm Avery Schaefer with Vishal Sachdev in studio. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So
You're welcome.
Vishal, you're the director of the Maker Lab on campus, which is part of the Guys College of Business. Now, on this show, we talk a lot about sports, but I think it's always good we bring in some other topics. So, for our audience, maybe give them an overview of what the Maker Lab is.
Sure, I'd love to. And thank you, for having me here.
Of course, anytime.
On a cold night, I'd rather be in a warm basement.
Sure.
Sure, absolutely.
So the Maker Lab, the Illinois Maker Lab, is in the college, in the Geese College of Business. We started about 5 years back with my co-founder, Dr. Eric Reinfleisch, with the vision of making it easy for all students, not just business students, to make. And because most students usually land up just making business plans or PowerPoint decks, but nobody ever really makes anything. And we picked on 3D printing as the tool to make that happen, and it was not too expensive to set up. And so our motto is make it sort of cheap to fail for students. And over time, we've grown, from a few printers to now 21 3D printers, and we run courses in the lab. We have online courses, workshops for kids, summer camps. We do stuff at the library. So pretty much any way we can turn ideas to objects, we're game.
Okay, so you talk about ideas to objects.
Yeah.
So last Wednesday, I got to meet with your class alongside Paralympians Jenna Fessmeyer, Ariel Rosen, our good friend Ron Malik, and of course Adam Blakeney. I'm still trying to grasp my head around why I was invited to that panel as not being a Paralympian, but I'll take the status. So we talked with your class about different ways we've innovated in our own lives. So Ron Malik talked about building a chair out of PVC pipe.
Really?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's very interesting.
And Ariel Rosen, she 3D prints gloves, racing wheelchair gloves. And Jenna Fessmeyer talked about her prosthetic leg and how they can 3D print prosthetic items and things,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. So from that discussion, what's next for your class?
So, I mean, the vision actually for this class is to replicate what happened by accident with Ariel. And so she started in Dina McDonough's, who's a professor in art and design, in identifying some concepts, where she could work on. And she then, just by chance, took my course and then got to prototype, gloves that were done, sort of handcrafted earlier. Took a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. And then she scanned them, with a scanner, and then was able to make them customized for anybody who wanted them. And then much cheaper, much faster, much more customizable. And that sort of led, had a sort of a snowball effect, and she worked with the Beckman Institute, and now she has her, startup sending gloves across the world. So inspired by that, we thought, how about we make this happen more often? And I've done this course for 4 or 5 years. It's called Digital Making. It's one of the 2 courses at the lab. And a lot of the times the students would, get inspired by their own daily life, which often enough is not very inspiring. So, they might make a better grocery bag carrier or, something to put on their windowsill. So we thought, I'm sure we can come up with more inspiring contexts where they actually put their mind to and get motivated to solve some real challenges, right? So and find opportunities. So that's how we're tied up with Dina McDonough, and the Siebel Center for Design sort of helped bring Adam into this. And now we have 6 teams with students from design, engineering, and business, mixed together in 3-person teams. And this panel that you just described was their first meeting with what we are calling mentors. So thank you for being a mentor.
Yes.
Where I see that many of the of course Adam has many sort of extreme athletes on his team, but folks like Ron, who've sort of the pure play DIY hacker, who makes his own wheelchair, modifications for sports. We want to be inspired by that. So it's not necessarily that we want these students to solve a problem that you might be facing, but it's more about that you're mentors in making sure that they think and they feel and they empathize and they find challenges that inspire them. And you might be sort of consultant saying, no, this is not the right way to think about it. But this is not, this is my daily life. I've got it covered. Do something else. And we are trying to push them towards more empowering context, more fun. For example, if Ron says, like in that last discussion, he's saying, I wish I could have, I could snowboard or, go skiing on my wheelchair. Now that's something fun. So that's what we're trying to have them do by interface with mentors like you and the others.
So it's interesting that you use the word vision.
Yeah.
Here on the show, we have a vision, don't we? That is to empower Paralympians and athletes with disabilities. To that end, what have your students thought of, aside from the gloves, to, I guess, assist Paralympians in realizing that potential, if anything?
So right now, that's the only project that has impacted Paralympians. Okay. But with this sort of formal effort where we are making them meet more and more of the users, we hope many of these projects that they come up with will have a greater impact.
Okay.
Now I had a follow-up question too. And now I think everything that you guys are doing is super innovative and will definitely pay off in the near future. But when it's all said and done, what do you hope to gain out of all of these different that you guys are trying to do, and what is your big ultimate end goal when this is all said and done?
I would say in two parts. One is that and the big, that's sort of the broader impact is that, which is where we started the Maker Lab, is can we make it easier for people to experiment, fabricate, contribute, create impact while using desktop fabrication? And that's become very cheap, very accessible. So that's one. The second is that if we can make them go from an idea, which is what Dina does in her course. We'll do some of that ideation again in this course as we are meeting new users, but then we do prototyping a lot more. They learn the skills around digital fabrication, so it's not just 3D printing. They learn CNCs, they learn laser cutting, they learn microelectronics, so maybe they can make a smart glove next, right, instead of a regular 3D printed glove. And hopefully some of these we can push forward into maybe a summer accelerator so that these products actually go out in the world. Not all of them, but some of them hopefully we can push out to the world as well.
That is absolutely tremendous.
So, you're making a lot of products, but does your vision also include altering students' perspective? Because
that's a great point. I think my perspective is changing, and particularly interacting with Adam. The first thing that he taught me sort of is that we are not really looking for challenges. We are looking for opportunities to contribute. So that change in language, I'm of course, turning around and having the students do that as well. Because, as you hear, I mean, 5 of you on that panel last me hearing your stories and, dealing, interacting with Adam, he says, our daily life is figured out. We don't think twice about, hey, I gotta, go out, half a mile or, 26 miles for these guys who do marathons every other week. And I don't really worry about the weather or things like that. So to change, the perception of students from looking at daily life, people on a wheelchair or extreme athletes, it's not really about solving a challenge in their daily life, but it's more about getting inspired. Because quite frankly, many of the people we have met are much more innovative, are much more resilient, have a lot more grit than many of our students.
they have to be.
Yeah, right. So then we get inspired and look for opportunities to create some impact. And the students learn, as you rightly say, they also have a change of mindset.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I think our heads are getting bigger and bigger as you talk. I know, just to clarify for our audience, when it was my turn to talk on that panel about my experiences, I've never built a chair. I've never 3D printed a prosthetic limb yet.
Yes.
All I could really say
That's
was...
the key word, yet.
Yeah, yes. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I just talked about how when I was a student, I mounted cameras on the end of my chair. We had
GoPros.
Yeah, so we had a GoPro Fusion when I did the Illinois Marathon 10K with Will over there, and then I also had DSLR cameras on my chair. And then in high school, I mounted, a cowbell or a triangle to my chair. So nothing too creative, but it was still something to make it easier for me. So I didn't have to carry a camera or carry a cowbell. So I really appreciate the opportunity to learn new perspectives and work with, young scholars.
Certainly. We hope it's an enjoyable experience for all our mentors. And as I said, I think I want to leverage your expertise in journalism in helping the kids learn how to reflect on what they're doing. So that's one big part of the course, and all the listeners can see what they're doing over the semester on our website.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
Check it out if you haven't.
yeah. Now, Zan, how about you? Tell me about an instance in which you've innovated. You've made something that really didn't look like it would work, but you've turned it into something that did work for you.
Well, let me think about this one.
I could even be getting into this building. I mean,
Well, that's one.
I figured it out.
That's one thing. Let's see, what did I do that I didn't think was going to work, but eventually did work? Well, actually, you have to go back to when I was in high school, and I did not know without playing how I was going to be involved on the varsity football and varsity basketball teams, and I noticed that there was a little tiny hole in the program where the program wasn't being quite promoted enough as they should have been. So I decided to pretty much take matters into my own hands and start running both official accounts, and it ended up working out in my favor because I was able to meet so many tremendous people who I still keep in contact with today, and it's something that a lot of other people around the area from where shout out to everyone back in Downers Grove who is listening. That is something from where I'm from that people can take with them and take that and use it in their own right. So that's probably the most innovative thing that I've ever created / done so far in my extracurricular life, so to speak. So.
Okay.
Yes, and to take my turn at answering that question, the most innovative thing I've ever done, perhaps, is getting on the show. Prior to last semester, I had never talked about having a disability in a public sense. I have always advocated for it, but I've never been able to find the avenue to reach people. Enter WPGU. Thank you. So yeah, that's how I've innovated. And honestly, I want to leave a legacy behind. I want to be known as the person who covers people with disabilities. I'm going to say this with a grain of salt, but the right way. There is no right way, but there is definitely a perspective change that is needed when doing a show like this.
I concur with everything you just said. That's right.
Wow, okay, so Vishal, hearing these different perspectives, what do you think you've learned about, students with impairments or persons with impairments overall? What have you learned?
I think the main message, and it's been, only a couple of weeks interacting with Adam and others, and of course I've interacted with Ariel and another student who was also on the team in the first batch. So Ariel was in the first 4 years back when we started the course. So I've been pretty impressed with again the level of persistence that I see among all the people I meet. So I would say I don't even yes, you have different abilities and you have challenges, but I think what's inspiring is the message it's an inspiring message is that how you respond to these these different circumstances and overcome them is I would say puts you at a level higher in terms of living experience than most of us. So that's my takeaway, that that's an inspiring context for me and then for my students as well.
Wow. Yeah, Ariel, she 3D prints gloves, and then she also helps create wheelchairs, correct?
Yeah, I think she's involved in a venture. She went to Kenya and she raised some funds, and I think she has ideas about how to make these sort of low-cost wheelchairs more easily accessible. If not entire wheelchairs, but some adjustments or supports that people can use. And that's where digital fabrication and 3D printing will come in handy. And I think some of the teams are already excited to work with her to bring that vision to reality.
Yeah, so where do you see 3D printing taking us in 10, 15 years?
I wish I could see that far into the future. But over the last 5-6 years that we've been doing it, so I guess I can say if we continue the past to the next 5 years, we are looking at cheaper, faster, more materials on the desktop. So now we are talking about printing metals on your desktop. So again, on a machine that would be coming in, let's say, under $10,000. So when you look at that kind of capability and the ease with which you can make one-of-a-kind thing, right? So for example, what you need as a support on your wheelchair for your big SLR, maybe the next person needs slightly a different kind of attachment. But both of them are now possible with quick iterations and modifications, and the cost is not too much. So that's what's given that materials are no longer a constraint, I think we're going to see a lot more innovation in one of a kind or 20 of a kind products. We don't need to make 1 million of something to make it viable. We can make 20 and that's good enough.
Yeah. Okay. So just kind of to simplify everything for our listeners and soon-to-be viewers, what's the difference between a 3D printer and just a normal printer that you print out paper?
Well, actually, if you look at Hewlett Packard, which is a leader in our regular printers, they've become a big entrant into 3D printers as well. So but to differentiate, if you just think of a 2D printer done over and over again, and you build a higher layer, that's what a 3D printer is. So 3 dimensions instead of 2. And most of the desktop printers print in a kind of plastic. So it's essentially melting plastic and then cooling it. So it melts it. Essentially it's like I guess the easiest analogy to think of desktop 3D printers is a hot glue gun. Essentially moving around on an XYZ axis. I mean, the more money you spend, they get fancier, and you do multicolor and you do metal and all that. But what you see, for example, in our Maker Lab is essentially a hot glue gun on an XYZ axis, which is melting plastic and cooling it. So it's fairly simple, though people still are a little bit, oh, this is too high tech. So I encourage all the listeners to come by and check us out.
Yes, for sure.
This is all very, very new. This is all very new to me hearing this, but I'm really, really glad that all of you that are working on this project have a passion for it, and I'm really excited to see where it not only takes the future of this university, but potentially
the world.
But potentially the rest of the world, exactly.
Changing the world right here.
We will try by changing people.
I am definitely going to stop by.
Sure, please do that.
I'll stop by as well.
Yes, we are on the 3rd floor in the business instructional facility.
3rd floor, Biff. Okay, I think I'll be there on Wednesday.
Yes, you'll be there.
9:30.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. So last question, can you buy 3D printers just to have in your house?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you can build them yourself. So some of the people who work in the lab, they've actually built printers for themselves. But if you're not all the way there yet, you can buy them. In fact, I think Lego made a reasonably cheap printer for, explicitly for making toys, and that was like $300. So, yeah, home use is entirely possible. I mean, my kids use, the printer for making stuff for school projects all the time. Yeah. And, science fair and stuff like that.
That would have been nice when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Just 3D print somebody else's project.
I know.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there is a full, it's sort of like an iTunes for physical parts online where you can download stuff and print. It's called, there are several, but the one we use is called Thingiverse.
Wow.
Wow, that's a great way to end the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it again. Vishal Sechdev, director of the Maker Lab. Now, Avery, I guess it's your time to close up the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
With that, thank you all for listening. This has been an edition of the Rolling Illini. We'll be back on the air with Josh Joins and Miles Hill and myself next Friday. Keep it rolling. Enjoy your week, everyone.